I have had 5 long-term relationships with men named Greg. It's not a fetish. It's not an addiction. I am not a Gregaholic. It's uncanny. It's unnerving. It's just weird, and it's not necessarily over yet. It all started when I began dating a boy named Greg Fisher. I was 15 years old. He was 17, so he could drive. He was about an inch shorter than I am, about 15 pounds lighter, and he had a blonde mustache. And on our first date, he rolled up in this badass yellow Jeep CJ7, 5-inch lift, big tires, smiley face, floodlights perched over the windshield. And his blonde mustache went from ear to ear in a big grin, and I looked up in awe. Now, our relationship was really nice. He was a really sweet guy, and next to me, he was kind of this small, quiet guy, but in his Jeep, he was huge. He was magnificent. But in the end, we broke up because I realized I was more in love with his Jeep than I was with him. When I was 20, I started I started college. I was at the University of Virginia. I was majoring in anthropology. And I was part of the singing and dancing group, and it was called Musique. And in fall semester, I walked into rehearsal, and the directors said, well, we want you to sing a duet with this new guy. He's a freshman, he's a pre-med, he's from West Virginia, and his name was Greg Brooks. And we were assigned to sing a song called Sometimes When We Touch by Dan Hill. Yeah. We practiced this song a lot, and we had these really beautifully choreographed moments where we touched hands and looked into each other's eyes. And Greg Brooks looked at me and he sang, sometimes when we touch, the honesty's too much and I have to close my eyes. By the end of the semester, we were dating. Now, Greg Brooks was the first man that I could ever imagine a future with. He was my first real adult love, and he was also my first, And I really loved him and wondered what would happen to our relationship. But when I graduated, he said he wanted me to wait for him. He wanted me to move back to West Virginia to be near his family. And I just didn't want that. I wanted to travel. I didn't want to be a stay-at-home doctor's wife. I wanted different things. We had different life goals, and so we broke up. When I was 27, I moved to Chicago, started graduate school, and on the first day, I walked into the anthropology department lobby and saw a guy I knew from college. He had been an anthropology major, we had classes together. He had also been a friend of Greg Brooks. His name was Greg Downey. He had just come back from fieldwork in Brazil, he was really adventurous, he was single, I was single, we hooked up. Now, it was at this point I started numbering the Gregs. Greg Fisher, Greg Brooks, Greg Downey. I hadn't had that many boyfriends in my life, and I did the math, and I calculated that, in fact, 82% of all my boyfriends had been named Greg. And I also realized at this point that I had been forgetting one of them. One of them predated Greg Fisher, Greg number 1. It was Greg Louganis. Greg Louganis is an Olympic gold medal springboard diver. I had been on the swim team, and I had idolized Greg Louganis. I had posters of him in my locker and on my walls. So we didn't have a physical relationship. It was just spiritual. But I had to include him on the list. He was my Greg 0. So I confessed all this to Greg number 3. I said, listen, I have this thing with Gregs. And I was expecting a different reaction, but he said, don't worry, babe, don't worry. That just means that I'm the Greg you've been looking for. I am your final Greg. I bought this, okay. So we had a really passionate relationship, but it was also very turbulent. Apparently Aries and Cancer signs don't mix romantically very well, and we had a really, really gut-wrenching breakup. Okay, at this point, I'm like, no more Gregs. I mean, what the hell, Laurie? Stop playing around with me, gods, witches, spirits, demonic jesters. What the hell? Stop doing it. Just stop it. No more Gregs, no more Greg Wars, Gregorios, McGregors, none of it. Draw the line. I no longer cared about destiny or synchronicity or anything that the Gregs might mean to me. It just was enough. That was it. About a year later, I walked into a ballroom dance studio, getting a little stress relief from graduate school, and one of the instructors walked up to me and said, hi, my name is John. I said, hi, John. He said, but I go by my middle name, which is Greg. So I resisted at first, but then I kind of gave in and rationalized, well, his first name is really John. It's not really Greg. Well, 2 years later, he cheated on me and we broke up. So this mystery of gregacity of my life, it might have just kind of gone by after the years. I might have forgotten about it. But in fact, the enigma of these multiple ex-boyfriends named Greg came back years later when I was married to a non-Greg and I was pregnant at age 41. And my in-laws, who are from India and Pakistan, told me that I should consult with a Hindu astrologer to find the most auspicious name for my baby. Now, part of me, I'm an anthropologist, I thought this was really cool. Of course I want to consult with a Hindu astrologer, and finding an auspicious name would be great. It just sounded really fun. But the other part of me was terrified, because what if the Hindu astrologer said the most auspicious name for my baby was going to be Greg? So in the end, I chickened out. I couldn't go through with it. I couldn't let somebody else decide the next Greg in my life. And I did not name my baby Greg. I reflect a lot on the Gregness of my life, especially now that I've separated from my non-Greg husband. I mean, I might live 40 more years. I can't keep evading Gregs for the rest of my life. And also, 35 years after my first Greg, I realize that it's not about the final Greg or the destination Greg, the last one. It's the journey. I imagine the Gregs of my life as these magical little sprites, these Greg lights lighting my path. They're kind of lighting the way that I should go in my life, and they're also becoming part of who I am. I drive a Jeep. It's kind of a badass Jeep. I did end up marrying a doctor. I'm still an anthropologist. I'm still a ballroom dancer. And I still love Greg Louganis.
Hey, Greg.